So for the square root property, I can use this property when there is no b term. So for example, when we have something like ax squared plus bx plus c, the a goes with x squared, the b goes with x, and the c is the number by itself. So if we don't have the bx, if we don't have just x by itself with the number, like if we did not have this 3x here, that is when we can use this strategy. So I'll go ahead and show you a few examples. I'm going to share the steps first, and then I'm going to show you a few examples, and then you guys can help me out as well. Okay, so there are two steps. The first one is to separate the squared term. So that's the ax squared. I'm going to separate that from everything. I want to get x squared by itself. I want to get x squared by itself. And then the second thing to do is I'm going to take the square root of both sides. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So taking the square root, and when I take the square root, I can't forget my plus and minus. It kind of looks like, I don't know, like a weird symbol, but it's a plus on top of a minus, and it means that there's two answers. It means there's a positive answer and a negative answer. All right, so we want to make sure that we don't forget the plus or minus. Awesome. All right, so we're going to start with our level 1 questions. I know how you guys like to build it up, so we start with our level 1 questions. I want to encourage you to go ahead and come off mute if you are interested in answering one of my questions. I love when we're off mute. That will really be awesome for me. You can also type in the chat if you feel more comfortable with the chat box. So for level 1, the first step that we're going to do when we do this problem here, the first thing that we need to do is separate the squared term from everything, right? So here's my squared term. There's nothing next to it. So step 1 is already done, right? So step 2 is to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root here and take the square root here. The square root and the square are inverse operations. They're opposite of each other. So that's going to leave me with x equals. And then does anyone know what the square root of 121 is? 11. Wendy, you must have had that already like up ready to go. 11, because 121 is 11 times 11. So the square root of 121 is 11. And that last piece, we can't forget that it's plus or minus. Anytime that we take a square root, we're going to have positive and negative answers. So I would say that x equals 11 or negative 11. That is what the positive or negative means. Okay. Cool. All right. I'll give you a second to go ahead and write down this one here. Y squared plus 36 equals 0. All right. So step 1 is to separate the squared term from everything. So here I have the squared term. So I need to get rid of the plus 36. How do I get rid of, what's the opposite or inverse of positive 36?
Negative 36.
Yeah, negative 36. Thank you. Minus 36. I'm going to subtract 36 on both sides. And that's going to leave me with y squared equals negative 36. So wait, okay, so we did the first one, we separated the square term. And the second one is to take the square root of both sides and not forget plus or minus. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. A square and a square root will cancel and leave me with just y equals. And we have to think of what number times itself will give us negative 36. So I see someone in the chat saying -6, but -6 times -6 would give me positive 36 instead of -36. If we do +6, we have 6 times 6. That would give me positive 36 as well. Is there anything that gives me -36? Yeah, it's undefined, or it's called no real solution, right? So if you remember, you might remember something with the I value. Does anyone remember I? Anybody? Have we done imaginary numbers before? No, maybe not. This technically is 6i, but we're not going to worry about that today. What we're going to go ahead and write is no real solutions. If we see the square root of a negative number, the square root of a negative number is always going to give us no real solutions as our answer. Right? No real solutions. If you do it on a calculator like Desmos, get that graph out of there. If I do it on a calculator, if I try to type in the square root of -36, you'll see that here it says undefined, right? It says undefined. And the reason that it's undefined is exactly for that reason. -6 times -6 is positive, and +6 times +6 is positive. There's no answer that will give us -36. So our answer in this case is going to be no real solution. All right. Cool. All right, let's try this one here. Go ahead and take a moment to write that one down. Question from the chat says, so if it's negative, it won't have a solution. If it's negative inside the square root, so like square root of -16, no real solution. Square root of -81, no real solution. Square root of 81, yeah, solution. It would be plus or minus 9, right? If it's inside the square root with a negative, it will have no real solution. Great question from the chat. Awesome. All right, cool. Okay, so for this one, I see that we have x squared here. I need to get rid of the times 2 and the -1. What can I do in order to get x squared by itself? I could divide 2. Let me ask you this question. If you had 2x minus 1 equals 23, what would you do first? Yeah, we'd move the 1 over. Yeah, you're totally right, Emiliano. We'd move the 1 over. So in this situation, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to add the 1 on both sides to get rid of it. So we have 2x squared equals 24, for sure. And now, right, we would have done this. We'd have 2x equals 24. And now what would we do? What would we do over here in order to get x by itself?
Divide by 2.
Yeah, we would divide by 2. So we're going to do the exact same thing in this situation. Divide by 2. So we'd have x squared equals 12. So that was our first step. Our first step was to get the x squared by itself. And our second step is to take the square root. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So I get x, because square root and square will cancel, and leave me with plus or minus the square root of 12. Is there a whole number, an integer, like something times itself to give me 12? Can anyone think of anything? No, yeah, me neither. Me neither. There's no whole number, right? Because I know 3 times 3 is 9 and 4 times 4 is 16. So it must be between 3 and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator and try square root of 12. And I see, oh, it's a decimal number. It's 3.46. So I would say, okay, this is 3.46 or negative 3.46. I can also leave it as a square root. So you'll see in your answer key today that you may also see like square root of 12 and negative square root of 12. Both of those are correct. So you could write it either way. For my students who are planning to go to pre-calculus or AP calculus at some point, or calculus in college, your professors will often leave it in the square root version, because that is the like more exact version. That's the more exact version. This is a decimal approximation. Okay. Awesome. All right. Go ahead and take a second to write this one down. All right. I need to get y squared by itself. What should I do first? -4. Thanks, Wendy and Antoine. Thanks, Emiliano. -4, subtracting 4 on both sides. And then we with -5, y squared equals -16. And now how do I get y squared by itself? Divide by 5. What kind of 5 am I going to divide by? -5.
Negative.
Negative, perfect. I'm going to divide by -5 here. Yes, thanks, Samantha, in the chat as well. So y squared equals, and then 16 over 5. That doesn't go evenly. I know 15 over 5 is 3, but this is not going to divide evenly. It's going to be 3.2. Yeah. I'm going to leave it as 16 over 5, just like this. I'm going to cancel the negatives, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive number. Right, so I can leave it like this. If you want to write it as 3.2, you can write it as 3.2. If you don't know that, you can also just do 16 divided by 5 in a calculator, 3.2. Thanks, Nayeli. All right, and then I have y squared by itself, so I want to take the square root of both sides, like that. So I have y equals, I can leave it as the square root of 16 over 5, or I could also take the square root of 3.2, and I get 1.79. Notice I'm rounding up because I have 7, 8, 8. The 8 is bigger than 5, so it rounds up to a 9, 1.79. What did I forget? What did I forget?
The square root over 1.79.
Say that again.
That's for the thing that it's called like the square. Oh, they're in the plus and the minus.
Yeah, the plus or minus. Awesome. No, you're great. Thanks for coming off mute. So we have plus or minus. Right, so we have that plus or minus. Both of these are correct. So you could either say square root of 16 over 5 and negative square root 16 over 5, or you could say 1.79 and negative 1.79. These answers are the same. Either one would be accepted in the house of Ms. Mack. Something cool on Desmos that you can do, you can also type in just the square root of 16 over 5 like that, and it will automatically translate to the decimal version for you. So you can check that out. Cool. All right, team. In the chat, tell me how you're doing. Tell me, are you a 0? I don't understand this at all. Are you a 3? I think I'm starting to get it. Or are you a 5? I totally get this. Sebastian's a 7. He's like off the chart. No, it's perfect, Sebastian. I love it. Lots of 5s in the chat. Awesome. Cool. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 spicy ones, and then we'll be done. So these are my spicies. Those other ones, those were like mild and medium. This is my spicy one. All right, what do you notice is different about this problem here? What is different? The parentheses. Yeah, for sure, parentheses. So since the parentheses are here, that means that this is locked up in here. we can't get to that -3 until we get rid of the square, right? Until we get rid of the square. Ooh, Antoine, yes. If we were trying to like multiply these together, we would have to use the box because this really represents this like this. We'd have to use the box, right? Don't write this down. We'd have to use the box and we'd have to do all this business. And then we could do like 4x squared, blah, 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 blah. We'd have like all these things down here and it'd be equal to 4 and we'd have to subtract the 4 over here. And then we'd have to use the x factor to factor it back out. Whew, that would be a lot of work, right? That would be a lot of work. So you're not writing this down. Don't worry about writing it down. Because I want us to think about a different way that we're going to do this, right? A different way that we can do this. So the different way that we can do this, right, is that the parentheses are locked up in here, but we can get to them if we take the square root of both sides. So the square is already by itself. So we can actually jump to part 2, right, to step 2, which is to take the square root of both sides, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. A square root and a square will cancel and drop out 2x minus 3 equals, and then the square root of 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. Yeah, 2. It's definitely 2. And what kind of 2? It's not just positive 2. What other kind of 2 is it? Negative 2 as well. So I'm going to write plus or minus 2. Right? So don't forget when you take the square root of something, you have positive and negative version of it. All right. So what this means is that 2x minus 3 could be equal to positive 2, or 2x minus 3 could be equal to negative 2. So I would have 2x minus 3 is equal to positive 2, or 2x minus 3 could be equal to negative 2, right? So we have the positive version and the negative version because there are 2 separate problems here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and solve each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, plus 3 gives me 2x equals 5 divided by 2. I get x equals 5 halves, or you could say 2.5 if you like your decimals better. Out of 5. And then on the other side, I could do plus 3, 2x equals negative 2 plus 3, which is 1, divide by 2. X equals 1/2, or if you like decimals, 0.5. So my 2 solutions are either 5 halves and 1/2, or 2.5 and 0.5 if you like decimals better. So this one is a little different because those parentheses force us, we can't get to the inside until we take the square root. And then once we take the square root, then we have the ability to solve for x. Okay. All right, that was our spicy. I have one problem I want you to try on your own. Go ahead and write down this problem. I'll leave this one up if you're still copying it down. Go ahead and write down this problem here. I want you to privately message me when you think you have the answer. Wendy had a great question. So these types of problems would have 2 different answers. They all have 2 answers, a positive and a negative for these ones. They should all have 2 answers. Some of them will be the same number, 1 positive, 1 negative, and some of them will be 2 different numbers. And these would be the kind with parentheses would be the ones that have 2 different numbers. That was a great question, Wendy. So you're working on this one here, and you're privately messaging me when you have an answer. I had an amazing question in the chat. It said, do I add 25 on both sides? Yes, you do. Add 25 on both sides. To my ACC folks, so sorry about not posting that module. It should be posted now, so you can double check. But all the information you need is in the chat as well. Awesome. Okay, team. I'm seeing a lot of great answers here. I want to go ahead and do this problem together. So first question was, do we add 25 on both sides? Which we totally do. 100x squared equals 25. What do we do right after that? What do we do after that? Then you divide by 100. Amazing, Miliano. Divide by 100. So you get x squared equals 25 over 100. If you like to use a decimal, you could at this point write 25 divided by 100 or 0.25. All right. And now, what do I need to do in order to get rid of the square?
Square root.
Square root like this. So I have square, oh, my pen died. Oh, there we go. X equals, and I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna take the square root of 25 over 100 is 0.5. That is not my answer though. What is my answer? This is one of my answers. What is my other answer?
Negative 0.5.
Yeah, negative 0.5. So plus or minus. And I wrote this in the wrong section here. Plus or minus. So this is 1/2, also plus or minus. So you could write it as positive or negative 1/2, or you could write it as positive or negative 0.5. Right, so you could write 1/2 and negative 1/2. Those could be your answers, or you could write it as 0.5 or negative 0.0 or negative 0.5. Sorry about the scrolling there. All right. You guys did an amazing job. If you're feeling good, if you got those problems, I want you guys to go ahead and look at the assignment today. Your assignment, you're going to drop in a picture of your notes, and then you do have your answer bank here. You're gonna solve each of these problems. Notice how many you have to do right here, either 6, 9, or 12. And then once you solve it, you're gonna look for your answer, and you're gonna drag that answer. Let's say you think this is the answer. You're gonna drag that answer into this box. So at the end, you should have you should have at least your numbers dragged into the right boxes. Right, so you're actually going to drag those yellow things in there. Right. I'm glad you found your mistake, Nayeli. Sounds good. All right, so you can either do it on paper if you want, and then you're going to drop a picture in here. That's totally fine. Or you can do the iExcel if you love iExcel. I know we have a few iExcel people out there. You can go to your normal numbers for iExcel. You can put your screenshot in there. It is just these problems here, and then a checkpoint today. For my honor students or anyone who wants additional practice, there's some more challenging problems down here on page 3, but they're optional for everyone. They're optional for everyone. So it should be a fairly light day today. The maximum number of problems you should do is 12, and that is just my honor students there. Okay, honor students there. Your breakout rooms are still open. So if you want to go to your breakout rooms now to work with your friends, you're welcome to. If you want to stick with me, I'll go ahead and do number 1 with you guys so that we can get started here. Number one. Cool. So we'll do number 1 together. Are there any questions before I start? All right. So if I have, well, I'll start with the example, right? I have just x squared by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. And I get x is equal to positive or negative 2. And that's how I ended up with this yellow answer here. Right, so I dragged that over from the answer bank, put it in right there. Okay. Anna, did you want to say something?
Oh no, I forgot.
Okay. No, that's fine, no problem. Thought maybe you had a question. Okay, so for those of you who are doing number 1, what could we do first? What should we do first here? Add, for sure. I'm going to add 55. That's going to give me x squared equals, x squared equals 6 and 5 make 1. Adding up here, that makes 8. 81. Awesome. So I'm going to add 55, positive 55 on both sides, gives me 81. Now I have x squared by itself. What's my next step? What's step 2? Square root. Good job, square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that gives me x equals, I know it's going to be positive or negative. What's the square root of 81? What times what gives me 81? 9, yes, 9. So my answer is positive or negative 9. So I'm going to go ahead and I see, oh yeah, here's my negative 9 here. I'm going to go ahead and drag that one over here. So here it should say yellow, x equals negative 9, positive 9. That means that this one is gone. Awesome, we already have one done. Is there any problem number here that looks kind of scary? One that you guys want to do together? Number 12. Cool. Yeah, let's do number 12 together. All right. Thanks for that vote. All right. So this is one of our spicy ones, right? Has parentheses here. In our spicy problem in our notes, what did we do when we saw the parentheses were like locking this stuff in here? How do we get it unlocked?
You square root it.
We square root it, absolutely. So we take the square root of both sides. So that means that the square root and the square will be inverses. They cancel each other out. And we're left with 2x plus 5 equals, what's the square root of 100? 10.
10.
And what can I not forget?
The plus and minus sign.
Plus and minus. Plus and minus like that. What does that mean for our problem that we have plus or minus at this point? Yeah, awesome. From the chat, we have to split it up. So we have 2x plus 5 could equal positive 10, or 2x plus 5 could equal negative 10. Like that. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5 to get x by itself. 2x equals 5, and divide by 2. I get x equals 5 halves, or subtracting 5 on this side, 2x equals negative 15, dividing by 2, x equals negative 15 over 2. So I have these two answers here. They're different because of those parentheses. And I'm going to look for that as a solution. Oh, check it out. See it right here. So I can move that one right there. Yeah, perfect. I think you guys are going to do an amazing job today. Sounds like you guys have a lot of confidence. So I want to just remind you, if you're star, you're choosing 6. If you're doing on track, you're choosing 9. Honors and ACC, you're choosing 12. So you're not really choosing, sorry, doing on 12. Or you can do the Excel if you wish. And then you just have your checkpoint form. If today was too easy, there's some hard ones down at the bottom. Other than that, I unfortunately do not have office hours today because I am going to a professional development, like training school for teachers. So I can keep being a better teacher for you. So if you have any questions, just shoot me a text or email and I will message you how to do that problem. So just let me know. Other than that, y'all, we are all done for today. So I will see you guys on Thursday. Have a great day off tomorrow, y'all. Have a great day off.